ループ再生です。The background music should loop. If I can get at least 2 hours in, then I'm happy. That's a good stream. That's a good stream time, I think. If I get disconnected, then I'll have to keep going on my own. I can tell when I'm disconnected, of course. もちろん切断されたらわかる。It's been 5 minutes. So it should be right on the page I need, right? I have to make Ray smaller. Kuromori Ray. Needs to go. His throat's a little dry. Okay. So, did I turn off the light on my end? Why did I say my end? Can I turn off the light? So it's more spooky. Okay. Chapter 14. Mina Harker's Journal. 23rd of September. Jonathan is better after a bad night. I'm so glad he has plenty of work to do, for that keeps his mind off the terrible things. Oh, I am rejoiced that he is not now weighed down with the responsibility of his new position. I knew he would be true to himself, and now how proud I am to see my Jonathan rising to the height of his advancement and keeping pace in all ways with the duties that come upon him. He will now be away all day till late, for he said he could not lunch at home. My household work is done, so I shall take his foreign journal and lock myself up in my room to read it. 24th of September. I had an hard read last night. That terrible record of Jonathan's upset me so. Poor dear, how he must have suffered. Whether it be true or only imagination, I wonder if there is any truth in it at all. Did he get his brain fever and then write all those terrible things? Or had he some cause for it? I suppose I shall never know. I want to make sure cursor isn't visible. Okay. I suppose I shall never know, for I dare not open the subject to him. And yet, that man you saw yesterday, he seemed quite certain of him, poor fellow. I suppose it was the funeral that upset him. And sent his mind back on some train of thought. He believes it all himself. I remember how on our wedding day he said, unless some solemn duty come upon me to go back to the bitter hours, asleep or awake, mad or sane. There seems to be, through it all, some thread of continuity. That fearful Count was coming to London. If it should be, and he came to London, with his teeming millions, there may be a solemn duty, and if it come, we must not shrink from it. I shall be prepared. I shall get my typewriter this very hour and begin transcribing. Then we shall be ready for other eyes if required. And if it be wanted, then perhaps, if I am ready, poor Jonathan may not be upset, for I can speak for him and never let him be troubled or worried with it at all. If ever Jonathan gets quite over the nervousness, he may want to tell me all of it, and I can ask him questions and find out things and see how I may comfort him. Letter, Van Helsing to Mrs. Harker. 24th of September, Confidence. Dear Madam, I pray to you, pardon my writing, that I am so far friend as that I send to you news of Miss Lucy Westerno's death. By the kindness of Lord Godalming, I am empowered to read her letters and papers, for I am deeply concerned about certain matters vitally important in them. I find some letters from you which show great friends you and how you were, and how much you love, and how which show how great friends you were and how you love her. Oh, Madam Mina, by that love, I implore you help me. It is for others' good that I ask, to redress great wrong, and to lift much terrible thoughts, and that may be more great than you could know. May it be that I see you? You can trust me. I am friend of Dr. John Seward, and of Lord Godalming. That was Arthur of Miss Lucy. I must keep it private for the present. From all, I should come to Exeter to see you at once. If you tell me I am privileged to come, and where and when I implore your pardon, madam. I have read your letters to poor Lucy, and know how good you are, and how your husband suffer. So I pray to you, if you may be, enlighten him, not lest it harm him. Again, your pardon, and forgive me. Telegram. Mrs. Harker to Van Helsing. 25th of September. Come today by 10:15 in train, if you can catch it. Can see you any time you call. Wilhelmina Harker. Mina Harker's journal. 25th of September. I cannot help feeling terribly excited as the time draws near for the visit of Dr. Van Helsing, for somehow I expect that it will throw some light upon Jonathan's sad experience, and as he attended poor dear Lucy in her last illness, he can tell me all about her. That is the reason of his coming. It is concerning Lucy and her sleepwalking, and not about Jonathan. Then I shall never know the real truth now. How silly I am. That awful journal gets hold of my imagination and tinges everything with something of its own color. Of course, it is about Lucy that habit came back to the poor dear, and that awful night on the cliff must have made her ill. I had almost forgotten it in my own affairs how ill she was afterwards. She must have told him of her sleepwalking adventure on the cliff, and that I knew all about it. And now he wants me to tell him what she knows, so that he may understand. I hope I did right in not saying anything of it to Mrs. Westenra. I shall never forgive myself. If any act of mine, were it even a negative one, brought harm on poor dear Lucy, I hope, too, Dr. Van Helsing will not blame me. I have had so much trouble and anxiety of late, that I feel I cannot bear more just at present. I suppose a cry does us all good at times, clears the air, as other rain does. Perhaps it was reading the journal yesterday that upset me, and then Jonathan went away this morning to stay away from me the whole day and night. The first time we have been parted since our marriage. I do hope the dear fellow will take care of himself, and that nothing will occur to upset him. It's just 2 o'clock. It is 2 o'clock, and the doctor will be here soon. I can read. I shall say nothing of Jonathan's journal unless he asks me. I am so glad I have typewritten out my own journal, so that, in case he asks about Lucy, I can hand him to him. It will save much questioning. Later, he has come and gone. Oh, what a strange meeting. How it all makes my head whirl round. I feel like one in a dream. Can it all be possible, or even part of it? If I have not read Jonathan's journal first, I should never have accepted even a possibility. Poor dear Jonathan. How he must have suffered. Please the good God, all this may not upset him again. I shall try to save him from it. Maybe even consolation and a help to him. Terrible though it be, and awful in its consequences, to know for certain that his eyes and ears and brain did not deceive him, and that it is all true. It may be that it is doubt which haunts him, and then the doubt is removed, no matter which, walking or dreaming may prove the truth. He will be more satisfied and better able to bear the shock. Dr. Van Helsing must be a good man as well as a clever one. if he is Arthur's friend and Dr. Seward's. And if they brought him all the way from Holland to look after Lucy, I feel him having seen that he is good and kind and noble nature. When he comes tomorrow, I shall ask him about Jonathan, and then, please God, all this sorrow and anxiety may lead to a good end. I used to think that I would like to practice interviewing. Jonathan's friend on the Exeter News told him that memory was everything in such work. That you must be able to put down exactly almost every word spoken, even if you have to refine some of it afterwards. Here was a rare interview. I shall try to record it verbatim. It was 2:30 when the knock came. I took my courage à deux mains and waited. In a few minutes, Mary opened the door and announced Dr. Van Helsing. I rose and bowed, and he came towards me, a man of medium weight, strongly built, with his shoulders set back over a broad, deep chest, and a neck well balanced on the trunk, as the head is on the neck. The poise of the head strikes at once, as indicative of thought and power. The head is noble, well-sized, broad, and large behind the ears. The face, clean-shaven, shows a hard, square chin, a large, resolute, mobile mouth, a good-sized nose, a rather straight but with quick, sensitive nostrils that seem to broaden as the big, bushy brows come down, and the mouth tightens. The forehead is broad and fine, rising at first almost straight and then sloping back above two bumps or ridges wide apart. With a forehead that the reddish hair can not possibly tumble over, but it falls naturally back to the sides. Big dark blue eyes are set widely apart, and are quick and tender or stern with the man's moods. He said to me, "Mrs. Harker, is it not?" I bowed assent. "That was Miss Mina Murray." Again I assented. "It is Mina Murray. I came to see that was a friend of the poor dear child Lucy Westenra. Madam Mina, it is on account of the dead I come." "Sir," I said, "you could not have better claim on me than you were a friend and helper of Lucy Westenra." And I held out my hand. He took it and said tenderly, "Oh, Madam Mina, I knew that the friend of the poor Lily girl must be good. That I had yet to learn." He finished his speech with a courtly bow. I asked him what it was that he wanted to see me about, so he at once began. "I have read your letters to Miss Lucy. Forgive me, but I had begun to inquire somewhere that there was none to ask. I know that you were with her at Whitby. She sometimes kept a diary. You need not look surprised, Madam Mina. It was begun after you left. It was in imitation of you, and in that diary she traces by interference certain things to a sleepwalking in which she puts down that you saved her in great perplexity. Then I come to you and ask you of your so much kindness to tell me all of it that you can remember." "I can tell you, I think, Dr. Van Helsing, all about it." "Ah, then you have a good memory for facts, for details? It is not always so with young ladies." "No, doctor, but I wrote it all down at the time. I can show you if you like it." "Oh, Madam Mina, I will be grateful. You will do me much favor." I could not resist the temptation of mystifying him a bit. I suppose it is as if some of taste of the original apple that remained still in our mouths. So I handed him the shorthand diary. He took it with a grateful bow and said, "May I read it?" "If you wish," I said as demurely as I could. He opened it, and for an instant his face fell. Then he stood up and bowed. "Oh, you so clever woman," he said. "I knew long that Mr. Jonathan was a man of much thankfulness, but see his wife have all the good things. And will you not so much honor me and help me as to read it for me? Alas, I know not the shorthand." By this time, my little joke was over, and I was almost ashamed, so I took the typewritten copy from my workbase and handed it to him. "Forgive me," I said. "I could not help it, but I have been thinking that it was of dear Lucy that you wished to ask, so you might not have time to wait. Not on my account, but because I know your time must be precious. I have written it out on the typewriter for you." He took it and his eyes glistened. "You are so good," he said. "And may I read it now? I may want to ask you some things when I have read it. When I have read." "By all means," I said. "Read it over whilst I order lunch, and then you can ask me questions whilst we eat." He bowed and settled himself in a chair, and with his back to the light, and became absorbed in the papers, whilst I went to see after lunch, chiefly in order that he might not be disturbed. When I came back, I found him walking hurriedly up and down the room, his face all ablaze with excitement. He rushed up to me and took me by both hands. "Oh, Madam Mina," he said, "how can I say what I owe to you? This paper is as sunshine. It opens the gate to me. I am dazed, I am dazzled, with so much light, and yet clouds rolling behind the light every time. But that you cannot comprehend. Oh, but I am grateful to you, so clever woman, madam," he said very solemnly. "If ever Abraham Van Helsing can do anything for you or yours, I trust you will let me know. It will be pleasure and delight, if I may serve you as a friend. But all I have ever learned, all I can ever do, shall be for you. And those you love, there are darknesses in life, and there are lights. You are one of the lights. You will have happy life and good life, and your husband will be blessed in you." I had to cough. "But doctor, you praise me too much, and you do not know me. Not know you. I, who am old, who have studied all my life, men and women. I, who have made my specialty the brain, and all that belongs to him, and all that follow from him. I have read your diary, and you have so goodly written for me, which breathes out truth in every line. I, who have read your so sweet letter to poor Lucy, of your marriage and your trust. Not you. Oh, Madam Mina, good women tell all their lives and day, by hour and by minute, such things that angels can read, and that we men who wish to know have in something of angels' eyes. Your husband is noble nature, and you are noble too. For you trust, and trust cannot be where there is mean nature in your husband. Tell me of him. Is he quite well? Is all that fever gone? And is he strong and hearty? I saw here an opening to ask about Jonathan, so I said, he was almost recovered, but he has been greatly upset by Mr. Hawkins' death." He interrupted. "Oh yes, I know. I have read your last 2 letters," I went on. "I suppose this upset him, for when we were in town on last Thursday, he had sort of a shock in brain after a fever so soon. That was not good. What kind of shock was it?" This is intense. I want more creepy music. He thought he saw someone who recalled something terrible, something which led to his brain fever, and here the whole thing seemed to overwhelm me in a rush. The pity for Jonathan, the horror which he experienced, the whole fearful mystery of his diary, and the fear that has been brooding over me ever since all came in a tumult. I suppose I was hysterical, for I threw myself on my knees and held up my hands to him, and implored him to make my husband well again. He took my hands and raised me up, and made me sit on the sofa, sat by me, and held my hands in his, and said to me, with such infinite sweetness, "My life is a barren and lonely one, and so full of work, that I have not had much time for friendships. But since I have been summoned to here by my friend John Seward, I have known so many good people, and seen such nobility that I feel more than ever. It has grown with my advancing years, and the loneliness of my life. Believe me, then, that I come here full of respect for you, that you have given me hope, not in what I am seeking of, but that there are good women left still to make life happy. Good women, whose lives and whose truths make good lessons for the children that are to be. I'm glad that I may be of some use to you. If your husband suffer, he suffer within the reins of my study and experience. I promise that I will gladly do all for him that I can, all to make his life strong and manly, and your life a happy one. Now you must eat. You are overwrought and perhaps over-anxious. Husband Jonathan would not like to see you so pale, and what he like not where he love is not to his good. Therefore, his sake, you must eat and smile. You have told me all about Lucy, and so now we shall not speak of it, lest it distress. I shall stay in Exeter tonight. I want to think much over what you have told me, and then I have thought I will ask you questions, and if I may, and then too, you will tell me of husband Jonathan's troubles so far, as you cannot yet, not yet. You must eat now. Afterwards you shall tell me all. After lunch we went back to the drawing room. He said to me, "And now tell me about him." When it came to speaking to his great learned man, I began to fear that he would think me a weak fool, and then Jonathan a madman. That journal is all so strange, and I hesitated to go on. But he was so sweet and kind. He had promised to help. I trusted him, so I said, "Dr. Van Helsing, what I have told you is so queer that you must not laugh at me or my husband. I have been since yesterday in a sort of fever of doubt. You must be kind to me, and think me not foolish that I have even half believed some strange things." He reassured me by his manner, as well as his word, when he said, "Oh, my dear, if you only know how strange is the matter regarding which I am here, it is you who would laugh. I have learned not to think little of anyone's beliefs, no matter how strange it be. I try to keep an open mind, and it is not the ordinary things of life that could close it, but the strange things, the extraordinary things, the things that make one doubt if they be mad or sane. Thank you 1,000 times. You have taken a weight off of my mind. You will let me. I shall give you a paper to read it. It is long, but I have typewritten it all out. It will tell you of my trouble and Jonathan's. It is a copy of his journal, when abroad, and all that happened. I dare not say anything of it. You will read it for yourself and judge, and then when I see you, perhaps you will be very kind and tell me what you think." "I promise," he said, as I gave him the papers. "I shall in the morning, so soon as I can, to come see you and your husband if I may. Jonathan will be here 11:30, and you must come to lunch with us and see him then. You could catch the quick 3:34 train, which will leave you at Paddington before 8. He was surprised at my knowledge of the trains offhand, but he does not know that I have made up all the trains to and from Exeter, so that I may help Jonathan in case he is in a hurry." So he took the papers with him and went away, and I sit here thinking I don't know what. Letter, by hand. Van Helsing to Mrs. Harker. 25th of September, 6 o'clock. I have read your husband's so wonderful diary. You may sleep without doubt. Strange and terrible as it is true. I will pledge my life on it. It may be worse for others, but for him there is no dread. He is a noble fellow, and let me tell you from experience, men that one who would do as he did going down the wall into that room, aye, and going the second time, is not to be injured in permanence by a shock. His brain and his heart are all right. I swear before I have even seen him, so be at rest. I shall ask him other things. I am blessed that today I come to see you, for I have learned all at once so much that again I am dazzled more than ever. I must think. Yours the most faithful, Abraham Van Helsing. I want creepy music. Let's find something else. Okay. Letter, Mrs. Harker to Van Helsing. My dear Van Helsing, 1,000 thanks for your kind letter. Which has taken a great weight off of my mind. And yet, if it be true, what terrible things there are in the world. And what an awful thing that if that man, that monster, really be in London. I fear to think. I have this moment, whilst writing, had a wire from Jonathan, saying that he leaves by 6:25 tonight from the Lunston and will be here at 10:18, so that I shall have no fear tonight. Will you therefore, instead of lunching with us, please come to breakfast at 8 o'clock? If this is not too early for you, you can get away if you are in a hurry by the 10:30 train, which will bring you to Paddington by 2:35. Do not answer this, as I shall take it that if I do not hear, you will come to breakfast. Believe me, your faithful and grateful friend, Mina Harker. Jonathan Harker's journal. Oh! I just want creepy music. Scary music, no copyright. "26th of September. I thought never to write in this diary again, but the time has come. When I got home last night, Mina had supper ready, and when we had supped. She told me of Van Helsing's visit, and of her having given him the 2 diaries copied out, and how anxious he was about me. She showed me in the doctor's letter that all I wrote down was true. It seems to have made a new man of me. It was the doubt as to the reality of the whole thing that knocked me over. I felt impotent, and in the dark and distrustful. Now that I know, I am not afraid, even of the Count. He has succeeded, after all, in his design, in getting to London. And it was he I saw. He has got younger. And how? hotel. 切断された. I'm pretty sure I was just disconnected. I lost my spot. And how? Van Helsing is the man to unmask him and hunt him out. If he is anything like what Mina says. We sat late and talked it all over. Mina is dressing, and I shall call it at the hotel in a few minutes to bring him over. I need my own music. He was, I think, surprised to see me. When I came into the room where he was and introduced myself, he took me by the shoulder and turned my face around to the light, and said after a sharp scrutiny, "But Madam Mina told me you were ill, that you had a shock." It was so funny to hear my wife called Madam Mina by this kindly, strong-faced old man. I smiled and said, "I was ill. I have had a shock, but you have cured me already." "And how?" "By your letter to Mina last night. I was in doubt, and everything took a hue of unreality. I did not know what to trust, even the evidence of my own senses. Not knowing what to trust, I did not know what to do, and so had only to keep on working in what had hitherto been the groove of my life. The groove ceased to avail me. I mistrusted myself. Doctor, you do not know what it is to doubt everything, even yourself. No, you don't. You couldn't, with eyebrows like yours." He seemed pleased and laughed as he said, "So, you are physiognomist. I learned here, with each hour, I am so much pleasure coming to you to breakfast. And oh, sir, you will pardon praise from an old man, but you are blessed in your wife. I would listen to him go on praising Mina for a day." I simply nodded and stood silent. "She is one of God's women, fashioned by his own hand to show us men and other women that there is a heaven where we can enter, and that its light can be here on earth. So true, so sweet, so noble, so little an egoist. And that, let me tell you, much is in this age so skeptical and selfish, and use her. I have read all the letters to poor Miss Lucy, and some of them speak of you, so I know since some days from the knowing of others. But I have seen your true self since last night. You will give me your hand, will you not? And let us be friends for all of our lives." We shook hands, and he was so earnest and so kind that it made me quite choky. "And now," he said, "may I ask you for some more help? I have a great task to do, and at the beginning it is to know. You can help me here. Can you tell me what went before your going? Transylvania? Later on I may ask more help, and on a different kind, but at first this'll do." "Look here, sir," I said. "Does what you have to do concern the Count?" "It does," he said solemnly. "It does." More like that. "Then I am with you, heart and soul. As you go by the 10:30 train, you will not have time to read them, but I shall get the bundle of papers. You can take them with you and read them in the train." After breakfast, I saw him to the station. When we were parting, he said, "Perhaps you will come to town if I send to you, and take Madam Mina too. We shall both come." "And when you will," I said. "We shall both come when you will." I had got him in the morning paper. I had got him the morning papers of the previous night. I had got him the morning papers and the London papers of the previous night, and while we were talking at the carriage window waiting for the train to start, he was turning them over. His eye suddenly seemed to catch something in one of them. The Westminster Gazette. I knew it by the color. And he grew quite white. He read something intently, groaning to himself. Mein Gott, mein Gott. So soon, so soon. I do not think he remembered me at the moment. Just then the whistle blew, and the train moved off. This recalled him to himself, and he leaned out of the window and waved his hand, calling out, "Love to Madam Mina. I shall write so soon as ever as I can." September 26th. Truly there is no such things as finality. Not a week since I said, finis. And yet here I am, starting fresh again. Rather, going on with the same record. Until this afternoon, I had no cause to think what is done. Renfield had become, to all intents, as sane as he ever was. Dr. Seward's diary. He was already well ahead with his fly business, and he had just started in the spider line also. So he had not been of any trouble to me. I had a letter from Arthur written on Sunday, and from it I gathered that he is bearing up wonderfully well. Quincy Morris is with him, and that is much help. For he himself is a bubbling well of good spirits. Quincy wrote me a line too. From him, I hear that Arthur is beginning to recover. Something of his old buoyancy. So, as to them, all my mind is at rest. As for myself, I am settling down to my work with the enthusiasm which I used to have for it, so that I might fairly have said that the wound which poor Lucy left on me is becoming citrified. Citrus. Everything is, however, now reopened, and what is to be the end, God only knows. I have an idea that Van Helsing thinks he knows, too, but he will only let out enough at a time to whet curiosity. He went to Exeter yesterday, and I stayed here all night. Today he came back and almost bounded into the room at about 5:30, and thrust last night's Westminster Gazette into my hand. "What do you think of that?" he asked as he stood back and folded his arms. I looked over the paper, for I really did not know what he meant, but he took it from me and pointed out a paragraph about children being decoyed away at Hampstead. It did not convey much to me until I reached a passage where it described as small puncture wounds on their throat. An idea struck me and I looked up. "Well," he said, "it is like poor Lucy's. And what do you make of it?" "Simply that there is some cause in common. Whatever it is, it was that has injured them." I did not understand his answer. "That is true indirectly, but not directly." "What do you mean? How do you mean, Professor?" I asked. I was a little inclined to take him lightly, for after all, 4 days of rest and freedom from burning, harrowing anxiety does help to restore one's spirit. But when I saw his face, it sobered me. Never, even in the midst of our despair about poor Lucy, he looked more stern. "Tell me," he said. "I can hazard no opinion. I do not know what to think, and I have no data on which to found a conjecture." Okay. Trying to see where I left off. Do you mean to tell me, friend John, that you have no suspicion as to what poor Lucy died of? Not after all the hints given, not only by events, but by me? Of nervous prostration following on great loss or waste of blood. And how the blood lost or waste? I shook my head, and he stepped over and sat down beside me and went on. You are a clever man, friend John. You reason well, and your wit is bold, but you are too prejudiced. You do not let your eyes see, nor your ears hear. In that which is outside of your daily life. It is not of account of you. Do you not think that there are things which you cannot understand, and yet which are? That some people see things, and that others cannot? But there are things old, and which must not be contemplated by men's eyes, because they know, or think they know, some things which other men have told them. Ah, it is the fault of our science, that it wants to explain all, and if it explain not, then it says there is nothing to explain. But yet, we see around us every day the growth of new beliefs, which think themselves new, and which are yet but the old, which pretend to be young, like the fine ladies at the opera. I suppose now you do not believe in corporeal transference? No? Nor in materialization? No? Nor in astral bodies? Like the fine lady... Oh. Nor in the reading of thought? Nor in hypnotism? Yes, I said. Charcot has proved that pretty well. He smiled as he went on. And you are satisfied as to it, yes? And of course, then you understand how it acts and can follow the mind of the great Charcot. Alas, that he is no more. Into the very soul of the patent that he influenced. No? Then, friend John, I am to take you simply accept fact, and are satisfied to let from premise conclusion to be a blank? No? Then tell me, for I am student of the brain, how you accept the hypnotism and reject the thought of reading. Let me tell you, my friend, that there are things done day to day in electrical science which would have been deemed unholy by the very men who discovered electricity, who would themselves, not so long before, have been burned as wizards. There are always mysteries in life. Why was that? Methuselah lived 900 years old, and old par 169. 169. Yet that poor Lucy with poor men's blood in her poor veins could not live even one day. For had she had one more day, we could have saved her. But do you know all the mystery of life and death? Do you know the altogether of comparative anatomy? And can say therefore the qualities of brutes are in some men and not others? Can you tell me why, when other spiders die, small, and soon the one great spider lived for centuries in the tower of the old Spanish church and grew until, on descending, he could drink the oil of the church lamps? Can you tell me why, in the Pampas, aye, and everywhere and elsewhere, there are bats that come at night and open the veins of cattle and horses and suck dry their veins? How, in some islands of the western seas, there are bats which hang on the trees all day, and those who have described like giant nuts or pods that, when the sailors sleep on the deck, because that is hot, flit down on them, and then in the morning are found dead, white as even Miss Lucy was. Good God, Professor, I said, starting up. Do you mean to tell me that Lucy was bitten by such a bat? That there was such a thing here in London in the 19th century? He waved his hand for silence and went on. Can you tell me why the tortoise lives more long than generations of men? Why the elephant goes on until he has seen dynasties? Why the parrot never die, only a bite or cat or dog or other complaint? Can you tell me why men believe in ages and places that are some few who live on always, if they be permanent? There are men and women who cannot die. We all know, because science has vouched for the fact that there have been toads shut up in rocks for thousands of years, shut in one so small hole that only hold them since the youth of the world. Can you tell me how the Indian fakir can make himself to die and have been buried in his grave, sealed and corn sowed on it, so that the corn reaped can be cut and sown and reaped again, cut and again? And then men come and take away the unbroken seal, and that there lie the Indian fakir not dead, but that rise up and walk amongst them as before. Here I interrupted him. I was getting bewildered. He so crowded on my mind in his list of nature's eccentricities and possible impossibilities that my imagination was getting fired. I had a dim idea that he was teaching me some lesson. As long ago, he used to do this in his study at Amsterdam. But he used then to tell me the thing, so that I could have the object of thought in mind all the time. But now I was without his help. Yet I wanted to follow him, and so I said, Professor, let me be your pet student again. Tell me the thesis, so that I may apply your knowledge as you go on. At present, I'm going in my mind, from point to point, as a madman, and not as a sane one. Follows idea and idea. I feel like a novice lumbering through a bog in a mist. Where was I? Jumping from one tussock to another in mere blind effort to move on without knowing where I am going. That is a good image, he said. Well, I shall tell you. My thesis is I want you to believe. To believe what? To believe in things that you cannot. Let me illustrate. I heard once of an American who was so defined in faith, the faculty which enables us to believe things which we know to be untrue. For one, I follow that man. He meant that we shall have an open mind, and not let a bit of truth check the rush in a big of truth, like a small rock does a railway truck. We get the small truth first. Good. We keep him. We value him. But all the same, we must not let him think for himself all the truth in the universe. Did you want me to not let some previous conviction injure the receptivity of my mind with regard to some strange matter? Do I read your lesson all right? Ah, you are my favorite pupil still. But it is worth to teach you, now that you are willing to understand. You have taken the first step to understand. You think then there were so small holes in the children's throats that were made by the same that made the hole in Lucy's, Miss Lucy. I suppose so. He stood up and said solemnly, Then you are wrong. Oh, would it were so, but alas, no, it is far, far worse. In God's name, Professor Van Helsing, what do you mean? I cried. He threw himself with his despairing gesture into a chair. He placed his elbows on the table, covering his face with his hands as he spoke. They were made by Miss Lucy. Shock. I need a bookmark. How much more of this is left? I think that's 20, 25, 26, 27. 27? What's 27 in Roman numeral? So about halfway done with the story. How long is this chapter? Well, not long, I guess. I'll read this chapter, then we'll finish. For a while, sheer anger mastered me. It was as if he had, during her life, struck Lucy in the face. I smote the table hard and rose up. As I said to him, "Dr. Van Helsing, are you mad?" He raised his head and looked at me, and somehow the tenderness of his face calmed me at once. Would I were, he said. Madness were easy to bear compared to the truth. Compared with truth like this. Oh, my friend, why think you I did so go far around? Why take you so long to tell you a simple thing? Was it because I hate you? And I've hated you all my life? Was it because I wished to give you pain? Was it that I wanted now so late revenge for the time when you have saved my life from a fearful death? Ah, no. Forgive me, he said. He went on. My friend, it was because I wanted to be gentle in the breaking to you. For I know you have loved that so sweet lady, but even yet, I do not expect you to believe. It is so hard to accept, at once, any abstract truth, that we may have doubt to be such possible, when we have always believed the know of it. It is more hard still to accept so sad a concrete truth, and of such one of Miss Lucy. Tonight I go to prove it. Dare you come with me? This staggered me. A man does not like to prove such a truth. Byron accepted from the category jealousy, and proved the very truth he most abhorred. He saw my hesitation and spoke. The logic is simple. No madman's logic this time. Jumping from tussock to tussock in a misty bog. If it not be true, the proof will be relief. At worst, it will not harm. If it be true. Ah, there's the dread. Yet, very dread should help my cause, for in it be some need of belief. Come, I tell you, what I propose first. That we go off now and see that child in the hospital. Dr. Vincent, in the North Hospital, where the papers say the child is a friend of mine. And I think of yours since you were in a class in Amsterdam. You will let 2 scientists see his case. If he will not let 2 friends, we shall tell him nothing, but only that we wish to learn. And then... He took a key from his pocket and held it up. Then we spent the night, you and I, in the churchyard, where Lucy lies. This is the key that locks the tomb. I had it from the coffin man to give to Arthur. My heart sank within me, for I felt that there was some fearful ordeal before us. I could do nothing, however, so I plucked up what my heart I could, and said we had better hasten, as the afternoon was passing. We found the child awake. It had asleep and taken some food. Altogether was going on well. Dr. Vincent took the bandage from its throat and showed us the punctures. There was no mistaking the similarity to those which had been on Lucy's throat. They were smaller, and the edges looked fresher. That was all. We asked Vincent to what he attributed it, and he replied it must have been a bite of some animal, perhaps a rat. But for his own part, he was inclined to think it was one of the bats which are so numerous in the northern heights of London. Out of so many harmless ones, he said, there may be some wild specimen from the south of a more malignant species. Some sailor may have brought one home and managed to escape, or even from the zoological gardens. A young one may have got loose, but one be bred there from a vampire. These things do occur, you know. Only 10 days ago, a wolf got out, and was, I believe, traced up to this direction. For a week after the children were playing nothing but Red Riding Hood on the heath, and in every alley in the place, until this blue-fur lady scare came along, since when it has been quite a gala time with them. Even this poor little mite, when he woke up today, asked the nurse if he might go away. When she asked him why he wanted to go, he said he wanted to play with the blue-fur lady. I hope, said Van Helsing, that when you are sending the child home, you will caution to his parents to keep strict watch over it. These fancies to stray are most dangerous, and if the child were to remain another night, it would probably be fatal. But in all case, I suppose you will not let it away for some days. Certainly not for a week, at least. Longer if the wound is not healed. Our visit to the hospital took more time than we had reckoned on, and the sun had dipped before we came out. When Van Helsing saw how dark it was, he said, there was no hurry. It is more late than I thought. Come, let us seek somewhere that we may eat, and we shall go on our way. We dined at Jack Straw's castle, along with a little crowd of bicyclists, and others who were genuinely noisy. About 10 o'clock, we started from the inn, and then it was very dark, and scattered lamps made the darkness greater. When we were once outside their individual radius, the professor had evidently noted on the road we were to go, for he went on unhesitatingly. But as for me, I was in quite a mix-up as to locality. As we went further, we met fewer and fewer people, till at last we were somewhere surprised, when we met even the patrol of the house, horse police, going on their usual suburban round. Met fewer and fewer people till we last were somewhat surprised when we suburban round. At last we reached the walled churchyard, which we climbed over with some little difficulty, for it was very dark and the whole place seemed so strange to us. We found the Westenra tomb. The professor took the key and opened the creaky door, and standing back politely, but took an unconsciously motioned me to precede him. There was a delicious irony in the offer, in the courtliness of giving preference on such a ghastly occasion. My companion followed me quickly, and cautiously drew the door to, after ascertaining that the lock was falling, and not a spring. 1. In the latter case, we should have been in a bad plight. Then he fumbled in his bag, taking out a matchbox and a piece of candle, proceeded to make a light. The tomb in the daytime, and when wreathed with fresh flowers, had looked grim and gruesome enough. But now, some days afterwards, when the flowers had hung lank and dead, their whites turning to rust, and their greens to browns, when the spider and the beetle had resumed their accustomed dominance, when time discolored stone and dust encrusted mortar and rusty dank iron and tarnished brass and clouded silver plating gave back to the feeble glimmer of a candlelight, the effect was more miserable and sordid than could ever have been imagined. It conveyed irresistibly the idea that life, animal life, was not only a thing which could pass away. Van Helsing went about his work systematically, holding his candle so that he could read the coffin plates, and so holding it that the sperm dropped in white patches, which congealed as they touched the metal. He made assurance of Lucy's coffin. Another suction bag, he took out a turn screw. And still holding it that the sperm dropped in white patches. I don't know what sperm means in this case. I know what it means normally. What are you going to do? I asked. To open the coffin. You shall yet be convinced. Straight away, he began taking out the screw and finally lifted off the lid, showing the casing of lead beneath. The sight was almost too much for me. It seemed to be as much of an affront to the dead as if it would have been to have stripped off her clothing in her sleepless living. I actually took a hold of his hand to stop him. He only said, "You shall see," and began again fumbling in his bag, took out a tiny fret saw, striking the turn screw through the lead with a swift downward stab, which made me wince. He had made a small hole, which was, however, big enough to admit the point of the saw. I expected a rush of gas from the weak old corpse. We doctors, who have had to study our dangers, have become accustomed to such things. I drew back towards the door, but the professor never stopped for a moment. He saw down a couple of feet along the side of the lead coffin, and then down the other side, taking the ledge off the loose flange. He bent it back towards the front foot of the coffin, holding up the candle into the aperture, motioned me to look. ちょっと待って。Okay. Motioned me to look. I drew near and looked. The coffin was empty. It was certainly a surprise to me and gave me a considerable shock, but Van Helsing was unmoved. He was now more sure than ever of his ground, and so emboldened, proceeded in his task. Are you satisfied now, friend John? Yes. I felt all the dogged argumentatives of my nature awake within me as I answered him. I am satisfied that Lucy's body is not in the coffin, but that only proves one thing. And what is that, friend John? That it is not there. That is good logic, he said, so far as it goes. But how do you know? How can you account for it not being here? Perhaps a body snatcher, I suggested. Some of the Undertaker's people may have stolen it. I felt that it was speaking fully, and yet it was the only real cause which I could suggest. The professor sighed. Well, he said, we must have more proof. Come with me. He put on the coffin lid again, gathered up all the things, and placed them in the bag, blew out the candle, and placed the candle also in the bag. He opened the door and went out. Behind us, closed the door, unlocked it. He handed me the key, saying, "Will you keep it?" "You had better be assured." I laughed. It was not a very cheerful laugh, I am bound to say, as I motioned him to keep it. "A key is nothing," I said. "There may be duplicates, and anyhow, it is not difficult to pick a lock of that kind," he said, but put the key in his pocket. And he told me to watch at one side of the churchyard, whilst he would watch at the other. I took up my place behind a yew tree, and saw his dark figure move until the intervening headstones and trees hid it from my sight. It was a lonely vigil. Just after I had taken my place, I heard a distinct clock struck 12, and in time came 1 and 2. I was chilled and unnerved and angry with the professor for taking me on such an errand, and with myself for coming. I was too cold and too sleepy to be keenly observant, and not sleepy enough to betray my lust. Trust. So altogether, I had a dreary, miserable time. Suddenly, as I turned around, I thought I saw something like a white streak moving between 2 dark yew trees at the side of the churchyard, farthest from the tomb. At the same time, a dark mass moved from the fresher side of the ground and hurriedly went towards it. Then I too moved, but I had to go around headstones and railed off tombs. I stumbled over graves. The sky was overcast, and somewhat far off in an early cock crew. A little way off beyond, a line of scattered juniper trees, which marked the pathway to the church, a white, dim figure fitted in the direction of the tomb. The tomb itself was hidden by trees, and I could not see where the figure disappeared. I heard the rustle of actual movement. Here I had seen the white figure coming over, and found the professor holding his arms in a tiny child. When he saw me, he held it out to me and said, "Are you satisfied now?" "No," I said in a way that I felt was aggressive. "Do you not see the child?" "Yes, it is a child, but who brought it here?" "And is it wounded?" I asked. "We shall see," said the professor, and with one impulse he took our way of the churchyard, he carrying the sleeping child. When he had got some little distance away, he went into a clump of trees and struck a match and looked at the child's throat. It was without a scratch or a scar of any kind. "Was I right?" I asked triumphantly. "You were just in time," said the professor thankfully. We had now to decide what we were to do with the child, and so consulted about it. If we were taken to a police station, we would have to give some account of our movements during the night. At least, we would have to make some statement as to how we had come to find the child. So finally, we decided that we would take it to the heath. When we heard a policeman coming, we would leave it where he could not fail to find it. We would not seek our way home as quickly as we could. All fell out well. At the edges of the Hampstead Heath, we heard a policeman's heavy tramp, and laying the child in the pathway, we waited and watched until saw it as he flashed the lantern to and fro. We heard an exclamation of astonishment, and then when he went away silently, by good chance, we got a cab near the Spaniards and drove to town. I cannot sleep, so I make this entry, but I must try to get a few hours sleep, so as Van Helsing is to call for me at noon. He insists that I shall go with him on another expedition. It was 2 o'clock, 27th of September. It was 2 o'clock before we found a suitable opportunity for our attempt. The funeral held at noon was completed, and the last stragglers of the mourners had taken themselves lazily away. When looking carefully from behind a clump of alder trees, we saw the sexton lock the gate after him. We knew that we were safe till morning, did we desire it, but the professor told me that We should not want more than an hour at most. Again, I felt that horrid sense of reality of things, in which any effort of imagination seemed out of place. I realized distinctly that the perils of the law which we were incurring in our unhallowed work. Besides, I felt it all so useless, outrageous, as it was open to a leaden coffin. To see if a woman dead nearly a week were really dead. Now it seemed the height of folly to open the tomb again. When we knew from the evidence of our own eyesight that the coffin was empty, I shrugged my shoulders, however, and rested silent, for the Van Helsing had a way of going on his own road, no matter who remonstrated. We took the key, opened the vault, and again courteously motioned me to proceed. The place was not so gruesome as last night, but oh, how unutterably mean-looking when the sunshine streamed in. When Van Helsing walked over to Lucy's coffin, I followed. He bent over and again forced the laden flange, and then a shock of surprise and dismay shot through me. There lay Lucy, seemingly just as we had seen her the night before her funeral. She was, if possible, more radiantly beautiful than ever, and I could not believe that she was dead. The lips were red, nay, redder than before, and the cheeks was a delicate bloom. "Is this a juggle?" I said to him. "Are you convinced now?" said the professor in a response. As he spoke, he put his hand over in a way that made me shudder, pulled back, and the dead lips showed the white teeth. "See?" he went on. "They are even sharper than before. With this and this," he touched one of the canine teeth and below it, "the little children can be bitten. Are you of belief now, friend John?" Once more, argumentatively, hostility woke within me. I could not accept such an overwhelming idea as he suggested. So, with an attempt to argue, of which I was even at the moment ashamed, I said, "She may have been placed here since last night." "Indeed? That is so. And by whom?" "I do not know. Someone has done it. And yet, she has been dead 1 week. Most people in this time would not look so." I had no answer for this, so was silent. Van Helsing did not seem to notice my silence. At any rate, he showed me neither chagrin nor triumph. He was looking intently at the face of the dead woman, raising the eyelids and looking at the eyes, and once more opening the lips and examining the teeth. He then turned to me and said, "Here, there's one thing which is different from all the recorded here. Some dual life that is not as the common. She was bitten by the vampire when she was in a trance, sleepwalking." Oh, you start. You do not know that. Friend John, you shall know it all later. And in trance could not be best come to take more blood. In trance she died, and in trance she is undead. So that she differ from all the other. Usually when the undead sleep at home. As he spoke, he made a comprehensive sweep of his arm to demonstrate what a vampire was home. The face show what they are. But this is so sweet that when she is not undead, she go back to nothing of the common dead. There's no malign here. So, see? And so, it make hard that I must kill her in her sleep. This turned my blood cold, and it began to dawn on me that I was accepting Van Helsing's theory. But if she were really dead, what was there of terror in the idea of killing her? He looked up at me, and evidently he saw the change in my face, for he said almost joyously, "Ah, you believe me now?" I answered. Do not press me too hard all at once. I am willing to accept. How will you do this bloody work? I shall cut off her head and fill her mouth with garlic, and I shall drive a stake through her body. It made me shudder to think of so mutilating the body of the woman whom I have loved, and yet the feeling was not so strong as I expected. I was in fact beginning to shudder at the presence of this being undead. This undead, as Van Helsing called it, and to loathe it. Is it possible that love is all subjective or all objective? I waited considerable time for Van Helsing to begin, but he stood as if wrapped in thought. Presently, he closed the catch of the bag with a snap and said, I have been thinking and made up my mind as to what is best. If I did simply follow my inclining, I would do now, at this moment, what is to be done. But there are other things to follow, and things that are 1,000 times more difficult. In that, then we do not know. This is simple. She have yet no life taken, though this is of time, and to act now would be a danger, to take danger from her forever. But then we may have to want Arthur. And how shall we tell him of this? If you who saw the wounds on Lucy's throat, and who saw the wounds so similar on this child's at the hospital, if you who saw the coffin empty last night and full today with a woman who had not changed, only more to be Rose, and more beautiful in a whole week after she died. If you know of this, know of the white figure last night, that brought the child to the churchyard, yet more of your own senses you do not believe. How well then can I expect Arthur, who know none of these things, to believe? He doubted me when I took him from her kiss when she was dying. I know he has forgiven me because, in some mistaken idea, I have done things that prevent him say goodbye as he thought. He may think that in some more mistaken idea that this woman was buried alive, and that in the most mistake of all we have killed her. We will then argue that it is we mistaken ones that have killed her by our ideas, so she'll be much unhappy always. You can never be unsure. You can never be sure. That is the worst of all. And you will have sometimes think that sometimes think sometimes think she he loved was buried alive, and that will paint his dreams with horror of what he must have suffered. And again, he will think he may be right, and that so beloved, after all, an undead. No. I told him once, and since then I've learned much. Now since I know it is all true, 100,000 times more, I know that he must pass through the bitter waters to reach the sweet. He, poor fellow, must have 1 hour that will make the very face of heaven grow black to him. Then we can all act good all around and send in peace. My mind is made up. Let us go. Return home for tonight to your asylum, and see that all will be well. All be well. As for me, I shall spend the night here in this churchyard in my own way. Tomorrow you will come to me to the Berkeley Hotel at 10 o'clock. I shall send for Arthur to come too. And that must also be so. Fine young man of America that gave his blood. Later we shall have to work. I come with you so far as Piccadilly and there to dine. I must be back here before the sunset. So he locked the tomb and came away, and got over the wall of the churchyard, which was not much of a task, and drove back to Piccadilly. I'm tangled up. What should I have left? Note left by Van Helsing in his portmanteau. Berkeley Hotel directed to John Seward, MD. Not delivered. 27th of September. Friend John, I write this in case anything should happen. I go alone to watch in that churchyard. It pleases me that the undead Miss Lucy shall not leave tonight, and so on the morrow night she may be more eager. Therefore I will fix some things that she not like not garlic and a crucifix, and so seal up the door of the tomb. She is young as undead, and will heed. Moreover, these are only to prevent her coming out. She may not prevail on her wanting to get in, for then the undead is desperate, and must find the line of least resistance whatsoever it may be. I shall be at hand all the night, from sunset till after the sunrise. And if there be aught that may be learned, I shall learn from it. From Miss Lucy, or from her, I have no fear. But that other to whom there is, she is an undead. He'd have now the power to seek her tomb, and find shelter. He is cunning, as I know, from Mr. Jonathan, and from the way that all along he have fooled us when he have played with us for Miss Lucy's life. And we lost in many ways. The undead are strong. He have always the strength in his hand of 20 men. Even when we forgave our strength to Lucy, it is all to him. Besides, he can summon his wolf, and I know not what. So, if it be that he come thither on this night, he shall find me. But none other shall, until be too late. But it may be that he will not attempt the place. There is no reason why he should. His hunting ground is more full of game than the churchyard where the undead woven sleep, and the old men watch. Therefore, I write in this case. I take the papers that are with this, the diaries of Miss of Harker, and the rest of them, and then find this great undead, and cut off his head, and burn his heart, or drive a stake through it, so that the world may rest from him. If it be so, farewell. Van Helsing. Dr. Seward's Diary. 28th of September. It is wonderful what a good night's sleep will do for one. Yesterday I was almost willing to accept Van Helsing's monstrous ideas, but now they seem to start out lurid before me as outrages on common sense. I still have no doubt that he believes it all. I wonder if his mind can have become in any way unhinged. Surely there must be some rational explanation for all these mysterious things. Is it possible that the professor can have done it himself? He is so abnormally clever that if he went off his head, he would carry out his intent with regard to some fixed idea in a wonderful way. I am loath to think it. Indeed, it would be almost a grave marvel, as some other find that Van Helsing was mad. But anyhow, I shall watch him carefully. I may get some light on the mystery. September. 29th of September. Morning. Last night, a little before 10 o'clock, Arthur and Quincy came into Van Helsing's room. He told us all that he wanted us to do, especially addressing himself to Arthur, as if all of our wills were centered on his. He began by saying that he hoped you would come with him, too, for he said there was grave duty to be done there. You were doubtless surprised at my letter. His query was addressed to Lord Godalming. It was. It rather upset me for a bit. There has been so much trouble around my house as of late. I could not do without any more. I have been curious, too, as to what you mean, Quincy, and I talked it all over, but the more we talked, the more puzzled we got. Till now, I can say for myself that I'm about up a tree as to any meaning about anything. Me too, said Quincy, Morris. Laconically. Oh, said the professor. Then you were nearer the beginning of both of you than friend Jonathan. Than friend John here, who is to go a long way back before you can even get so far as to beginning. It was evident that he recognized my return to my old doubting frame of mind, without saying a word. Then turning to the other two, he said with intense gravity, I want your permission to do what I think is good this night. It is. I know much to ask, and when you know what it is I propose to do, you will know. And then, how much? Therefore, may I ask that you promise me in the dark, so that afterwards you may be angry with me for a time. I must not disguise from myself the possibility that such may be. You shall not blame yourselves for anything. That's frank anyhow, broke in Quincy. I'll answer for the professor. I don't quite see his drift, but I swear he's honest. And that's good enough for me. I thank you, sir, said Van Helsing proudly. I have done myself the honor of counting you one trusting friend. And such endorsement is dear to me. He held out a hand which Quincy took, and Arthur spoke. Dr. Van Helsing, I don't quite like to buy a pig in a poke, as they say in Scotland. And if it be anything in which my honor as a gentleman or my faith as a Christian is concerned, I cannot make such a promise. If you can assure me that what you intend to do does not violate either of those two, and I give my consent at once, though for the life of me I cannot understand what you are driving at. I accept your limitation, said Van Helsing, and all I ask of you is that you feel it necessary to condemn any act of mine, you will consider it well satisfied and does not violate your reservations. Agreed, said Arthur. That is only fair. And now the parlors are over, I may ask, what are we to do? I want you to come with me and come in secret to the churchyard at Kingstead. Arthur's face fell as he said in a mazed sort of way, where Lucy is buried? The professor bowed and went on, and went there to enter the tomb. Arthur stood up. Professor, are you in earnest, or are you a monstrous joke? Or is it some monstrous joke? Pardon, I see that you are in earnest. He sat down again, but I could see that he sat firmly and proudly as one who's on his dignity. There was silence again until he asked again. And went in the tomb to open the coffin. This is too much, he said angrily, rising again. I am willing to be patient in all things that are reasonable, but in this, the desecration of the grave of one who fairly choked with indignation. The professor looked pityingly at him. If I could spare you one pang, my poor friend, God knows I would. But this night our feet must tread in thorny paths, or later, and forever, The feet you must love must walk in the paths of flame. Arthur looked up and set white in face and said, "Take care, sir, take care. Would it not be well to hear what I have to say?" said Van Helsing. "And then you will at least know the limit of my purpose. Shall I go on?" "That's fair enough," broke in Morris. After a pause, Van Helsing went on, evidently with an effort. "Miss Lucy is dead, is it not so?" "Yes." "Then there can be no wrong to her. But if she be not dead..." Arthur jumped to his feet. "Good God," he cried. "What do you mean? Has there been any mistake? Has she been buried alive?" He groaned in anguish, and not even hope could soften. "I did not say she was alive, my child. I do not think it. I go no further than to say that she might be undead." "Undead? Not alive? What do you mean? Is this all nightmare? What is it?" "There are mysteries which men can only guess, which, age by age, they may solve only in part. Believe me, we are now on the verge of one. But I have not done... May I cut off the head of dead Miss Lucy?" "Heavens and earth, no!" cried Arthur in a storm of passion. "Not for the wide world will I consent to any mutilation of her dead body. Dr. Van Helsing, you try me too far. What have I done to you that you shouldn't torture me so? What did that poor sweet girl do that you should want to cast such dishonor on her grave? Are you mad to speak such things, or am I mad to listen to them? Don't you dare to think more of such a desecration. I shall not give my consent to anything you do. I have a duty in protecting her grave from an outrage, and by God I shall do it." Van Helsing rose up from where he had all the time been seated and said gravely and sternly, "My lord, Goldaming, I too have a duty to others, a duty to you, a duty to the dead, and by God I shall do it. I ask you now is that you come with me, and that you look and listen. And later I make the same request. You do not be more eager for its fulfillment, even than I am. Then I shall do my duty, whatever it may seem to be, and then follow of your lordship's wishes. I shall hold myself at your disposal to render an account to you, when and where you will." His voice broke a little, and when he went, a voice full of pity. "But I beseech you, do not go forth in anger with me. In a long life of acts which were often not pleasant to do, and which sometimes did wring my heart, I never had so a heavy task as now. Believe me that, if the time comes for you to change your mind towards me, one look from you will wipe away all this sad hour. For I would do what a man can do to save you from sorrow. Just think, for why I should give myself so much of labor, so much sorrow. I have come here from my own land to do what I can of good. At the first to please my friend John, and then to help a sweet young lady, whom I came to love. For her, I am ashamed to say so much. I say it in kindness. I gave what you gave, the blood of my veins. I gave it, who was not, like you, her lover, but only her physician and her friend. I gave to her my nights and my days, before death, after death, and if my death can do her good now, when she is undead, she shall have it freely." He said this with a very grave, sweet pride, and Arthur was much affected. He took the old man's hand and said in a broken voice, "Oh, it is hard to think of it, and I cannot understand, but at least I shall go with you and wait." Ah. 疲れた。ここで終わります。I'm gonna end it here. I'll change the bookmark to chapter 16. So that'll be next time. 次回は16。では、見てくれてありがとうございます。時間も見に来てくれるとありがたい。Thank you for watching today, and I hope you watch again next time too. Gracias por mirar. Espero que venga a ver la próxima vez. では、クレジット。Where are the credits? 見てくれてありがとう。ローム見てくれてありがとう。Thank you for watching and thank you for lurking. We're more than halfway done with the book. There are 27 chapters and we're on chapter 16. That's more than halfway. We started with more than halfway, actually. では、終了。お疲れ。バイバーイ。